Welcome to the 21st episode of Kaelon Supernova podcast, where we explore how leaders navigate complexity and how do they make high-stake decisions. Today, we're going to explore not just how decisions are made around who do we hire at the highest levels, but also how do we address specific leadership situations. And today, we are joined by Álvaro Carcel. Welcome, Álvaro.
Thank you. Merci. Good to be around with you today.
It's great to have you today.
Thank you.
Álvaro, you are the partner Iberia at KINT. You're a leadership strategic advisor. You're also an executive search expert. You've spent the last decade recruiting for very senior roles across many industries, spanning FMCG, retail, tech, manufacturing, pharma, and healthcare. And you've worked on very international assignments across Europe, US, and LATAM. Today, you're leading the Iberia expansion at KINT, a boutique executive firm which is also specializing in interim management that is headquartered in Paris, but also very active globally. So very, very nice to have you with us today. And Álvaro, to start with, I have a question because I know you come from a legal background. So you were trained as a lawyer, and yet you ended up being an executive search expert. How did you transition into that world?
Yeah, that's a question that I get actually asked a lot because it's a big transition, right? And I could make a fancy story or just say the truth, and it was actually a pure coincidence, honestly. So back then I was working as a lawyer, but there was something that didn't click. I wanted to do something different. I was interested in business. Back then I really liked HR, marketing, for instance, and also it was missing a little bit the international aspect. So I was fortunate enough to apply to a scholarship, and I got it. That actually helped me move internationally. I relocated to Budapest, beautiful city, indeed, to an executive search firm specialized in very senior legal profiles. The company was founded by an American, so it was a pure international environment. And actually, it was doing something very different, but still related to my legal background. So I found that was a fantastic opportunity. And that's how actually I ended up in this world. Mm-hmm. And since then, it's been more than a decade now, 12 years to be precise, that I've been in the executive search industry.
All right. So yes, now 10 years afterwards, what made you actually stay in that industry?
Look, I had a former boss of mine. She said something to me that it's really true. And it's like executive search is like studying an MBA for free. And it is true because you get exposed on a daily basis to very different industries, to very different situations, very different functions, and you end up learning a lot about how business operates, right? Mm-hmm. And that links well to curiosity, which is probably one of my drivers. I mean, I consider myself quite a curious guy. I'm interested in lots of things. So that is probably one of the answers. Besides that, I really like today the level of the people that I get to meet on a daily basis.
So
very
you
bright.
Work with C-levels.
C-level, very bright people, very smart. So I learn every day a lot.
And
so
from
that's
a large variety of sectors now, as we saw before.
Indeed. So that's definitely one of the things. Another thing that I like personally, I'm very interested in macroeconomics, for instance, and understanding how businesses react to the different challenges that happen worldwide. This is something that I also like, right? So being actually very close to the strategy, to the decision makers, how they take decisions and why. This is really actually interesting for me. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the main reason why I'm still here today after 12 mm-hmm. years.
And there are many reasons now. I assume many changes constantly at a fastest pace ever. Mm-hmm. So we understand the reason why. Now I wonder, what is your unique angle and maybe even differentiator? Being a lawyer and also a recruiter, what is this unique thing or unique perspective that you bring? to your work?
Today, even if it has rained a lot since I was working as a lawyer. I think that there are still things there that I keep with me, right? And probably I would say risk anticipation. As a lawyer, you're always trying to anticipate risks. Um, and I think that in recruitment, especially at this level, you carry a weight in your shoulders because depending on how good is the person that actually enters the organization, well, actually, the strategic plan of the company actually will go in one direction or another, right? So being able not only to assess candidates but to anticipate risks, I think this is quite unique. And I would say that probably this is one of the things that I can bring and is slightly different maybe from other people in the industry.
Organizational, legal, macroeconomic, all typologies of risks, I would assume.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if we were to work together on a specific assignment to recruit a C-level for my team, what kind of questions could I expect from you?
Look, one question that I always ask, and I think it's very important as a company to have a clear, straight answer to that, is where you want to be in 18 months from now.
Not 5 years, right?
Not 5 years
Not
anymore.
anymore.
We're talking about short term, not necessarily 6 months, but year and a half. I think that's already a good horizon, right? And of course, lots of things can happen in the meantime, and we live in a world of constant uncertainty and increasing uncertainty. But still, I think it's important to have a plan and to be able to answer that question. Right? Second part of the question, so the one that follows, is not only where you want to be, but what can prevent you to get there as a company, right? Because you can have a vision, but if you're not aware of the challenges that you have today, this vision might be just wishful thinking, right? So these two questions, among many others, but this is the starting point. And I think a good brief, actually, when you start the brief, you should start from here. So those are definitely the main question, the first two questions that I would definitely ask.
To establish a precise diagnosis now before you even start.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Since you like macroeconomics, what are the main trends that you have identified that affect the talent market today?
Maybe a couple that I think are extremely important today. So the first one is the business cycles are shorter today. We were talking about the 5 years business plan. This doesn't exist anymore. So we think maybe in 1 or 2 years horizon, right? So that also means that the leadership cycles are getting shorter in organizations. And the end result is that the average tenure of employees also at C-level is decreasing, right? And you see in companies like Amazon or other technological companies, consulting firms, that the average tenure is 2 years, maybe between 2 and 3 years. This is crazy. This is very
in the company, not just in a specific
no,
role.
in the company. Yeah. And this is really difficult, especially for HR directors or talent directors. I mean, how can you plan the future if you know that the average tenure is 2-3 years? So this is a big challenge. And I would say the second and very important is remote work and hybrid models. Yeah. I mean, this has broken geographies, and that has, of course, implications. As a company, you're not competing anymore with your neighbors, with other companies in your city or even in your country. You're competing globally with other companies. And as a candidate, you're not competing again with your neighbors or other people in your city or country. You're competing with talent worldwide, and that creates actually lots of challenges.
Of course. So you need to understand, I guess, local cultures for the talents to be relevant, but there's this global competition that also elevates the level expected from the candidates.
Yes. Yeah. And as a candidate, I mean, you're competing. Maybe you could be based in Madrid or in Barcelona, and you're competing with someone in Paris, in Singapore, or in the US, right? So that is a fierce competition. And actually, this is something that you as a candidate, especially at C-level, you need to understand, and perhaps you need to change a little bit the strategy.
And I get for companies in your sector, it's extremely relevant to have that breadth, also geographical breadth in their activity.
That's right. So for instance, we at KINT, the company was founded in 2019 in Paris, as you mentioned, but it's been expanding internationally actually to answer the demands of the clients that need actually someone that can, of course, take a search with a global mindset, but at the end of the day, you also need local execution. So having people spread out in different countries, that is something that helps us a lot.
So with all those changes that you're describing now, the speed, the level of competitivity on the talent market, how did you adapt in the way that you operate?
So it's good because I have a 12 years view of how the industry has changed, and
It's changed drastically,
it
right?
changed drastically, and I think this change is across all industries, and especially in ours. Well, yes, I would say the answer, going straight to the point, is being able to execute faster. So companies expect results much faster. There was an old mantra in executive search. Typically, all the big firms, they were able to provide results in 5-6 weeks, more or less, right? So you kick off a search, 5-6 weeks of work, and then you deliver a shortlist, 3-4 candidates after mapping the whole market. This is great, still valid if you have time, but the problem is that time is scarce, and companies need results very quickly. So
how do you balance?
Well, you have to change.
The speed
you
on
have to
one
change.
hand, and the quality, right?
Exactly. So today we don't wait, or at least we don't wait until we have a full shortlist. As long as we have at least one very good candidate, if it's in week one, we just move fast and we present that candidate, because otherwise we're missing opportunities. And that's actually what the clients require. Of course, they still want us to do an excellent job, but probably speed is highly valued more than ever.
Yeah. Oh, that's very understood. From your vantage point, what makes a great hire at the C level today?
I mean, it really depends on the role, right? Of course. But there is one thing, a little bit linked to what we were discussing, but also applies at the end of the day to C level, which is fast execution. So I think that we live now in a world that is less patient. So companies at all levels, not only at C level, also with junior profiles, let's say that they put a lot of pressure on being able to bring results quickly, right? So it's not about being the most strategic person in the room today, which in the past, that was actually what was expected from a C-level, being able to actually define the strategy. Today, yes, defining, of course, you need this bright person that is able to do it. But then what it's really, really valued is, okay, how fast can you execute that?
So very hands-on, action-oriented, results-oriented candidates.
And even more, if I can add something here, even more in a world where today most organizations work they operate globally. So, and with remote work, typically you have teams that are spread out in different parts of the world. So you are not actually next to the team. So actually doing this with teams reporting into you directly or indirectly, but you cannot touch them, meet them on a daily basis, right? So doing this with remote works is even more challenging.
Yes, I keep hearing this from my clients, no? Especially, for example, CTOs having their whole operational teams in India, etc. So this is very complex indeed, as you said. We don't have those daily interactions, daily hallway conversations, and you need to be very intentional about the communication. At a more personal level, what do you look for or appreciate, in a candidate, and maybe more personality-wise or attributes?
Me personally, I'm a big fan, and I would say I'm a little bit obsessed with self-awareness. Right. So
that makes the two of us.
Yeah. So actually, when we assess these C-level guys, what I try to see is first humility. So how humble this person is, because it's very important at this level. But also, I love to understand throughout the career the challenges and the mistakes this person has made, what this person learned about it, and what he or she did differently based on this learning, right? So these things, besides what he or she has done, to me is very important. And actually, our assessments on the personal side go in this direction.
Understand. So yeah, You really assess your candidates before actually presenting anyone with this growth mindset
Exactly.
in mind. Okay, perfect. I also assume that you would be looking at different candidates depending on the situation. And we spoke already about the turmoil that companies are going through right now and need for constant reinvention. 20 years ago, Michael Watkins described 5 main situations. He called it the STARS model. It was about startup or turnarounds, accelerated growth, or realignment, or sustaining success over time. Do you believe this model is still valid today? And maybe also you specifically, what are those situations that you typically support with?
I think it's still valid. So those are the kind of situations that we are exposed on a daily basis. But I would add one specificity because at least today here at KINT, for instance, we work a lot with private equities. Private equities, they arrived a few years ago and actually they've expanded a lot, investing worldwide. And this is what they do is quite specific, right? And we see a lot of M&A, we see a lot of growth, we see a lot of then divestments, for instance. So, and all these situations actually require a specific leader as well. So yeah, again, still valid, but perhaps I would add this angle, which is maybe a little bit different than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And it creates also like a faster rhythm and everything.
Yes.
What do you personally observe in the recruitments that you've been supporting, accompanying? What are the typical mistakes that company makes when it comes to recruiting a C-level? Is there something patterns that you see repeat?
Look, I think that it's the most common mistake is hiring the right person for the wrong situation. Right, and it's
so a great candidate is not
great
great in every situation given.
Exactly, and probably the mistake is maybe as a company, it's important to do the homework before because these roles are critical, and there's very good talent out there, and sometimes again it's not about the person, it's about the person in the wrong situation. So I would say that this is number one, probably.
So it seems like a very important mistake indeed. And can you maybe walk us through a concrete example?
I mean, I have plenty. Okay,
sure you do.
Because it's normal. I mean, I understand. I mean, I said that the homework needs to be done before, but it is true that we live in a world with constant changes and things change very fast. So sometimes it's not even the mistake of the company. It's just, the reality of the market. Things change from one day to another, and maybe the person that was right for this specific situation, it's not anymore. But just to answer your question, I'll give you a specific example, something that we actually experienced recently. We were, for instance, looking for a CIO, Chief Information Officer, for a pharmaceutical company. And in that case, when we were defining the profile, especially from a personality standpoint, the hiring manager put a lot of emphasis on we need this person to be a very good communicator, someone who can influence different stakeholders. And the reason why is because actually the main mission of this CIO was to lead a very important project for the company that was migrating ERP.
Okay.
So this is a critical project. It's very technical.
Yeah.
It's very time consuming, very draining.
A lot of time management involved.
A lot of time management. Lots of companies fail, so it's critical. But again, I think the problem, and that's we tried to challenge there, was do we really need someone that is a really good communicator for this? Why? The question was why. And the answer was, well, actually, this person will have to report to the board the progress of the project. And okay, that makes sense. But how many times? How often? 2 times? 3 times? In a year or in 2 years? Do we really need this person? Because if we do, then we are limiting ourselves. Because, well, of course, we can find a CIO with great communication skills, influencing skills, but maybe most of them won't. And still they can do a fantastic job because what they need to do is actually very, very technical. Right?
So what would you focus instead in that specific situation? What is the skill set?
So we tried actually to challenge a little bit that perhaps what we need is more, someone that can actually connect very well internally with their teams to create a solid group of people, someone that is very strong technically. And perhaps if this person needs to report every now and then to the board, well, maybe we can support this person, or someone in the team is actually a very good communicator and they can go together and do it. But then we open up, because if we narrow too much the search, we're losing time. And as we know, when we discussed before, time is precious today, right? So that is, for instance, a good example of the kind of situations that we find.
So it sounds like any mistake in that sense is substantial, because you're losing time, is losing opportunities, losing important resources. What would you say is the cost of such a mistake? Having the wrong person, a great candidate, but that's not the right person for the situation.
At this level, the cost is massive, right? And we're talking about two things. So one, from a cost, financial cost perspective, it is estimated that hiring the wrong C-level person, the cost could be more or less up to 3 times the yearly total compensation, more or less up to. So that means that if this person makes 200K, the cost could go up to 600K. So this is quite a lot, because here you have to take into account, of course, the salary, but then severance costs, the cost of rehiring the new person. So that's a lot.
And maybe even attrition on the team.
Attrition on the team. So lots of potential risks as well. But the second is time. When you hire someone at this level, typically it takes between 6 to 9 months to realize, okay, we made a mistake. But then, of course, there is a process to negotiate how this person exits the organization in the best way possible. That takes maybe a few more months. And then the time you need to replace that person. So you end up basically losing between, 18 months to 2 years. And that's a lot in a critical position
that no one has.
No one can afford. Right? So it's very important to make it right.
So we talked about different types of situations, and you brought in the private equity partners. What do you believe are the recurring leadership situations that require specific skill sets or even characteristics and different types of leaders?
There are many situations. I can quickly mention
brush
3
up
or 4, a few that I'm exposed on my daily basis. So the first one is hyper growth. That means companies growing extremely fast, right? And here,
you said you're working with tech, you work pharma, maybe also.
Pharma is more stable,
right
but tech, for instance, these companies, they can grow extremely fast, right? And it's not the same being a company of 100 people to in 2-3 years becoming a 5,000 people company. It's completely different. So here in this context, you need profiles that are able to move in a very fast-paced environment. Again, decision making with uncertainty, with imperfect information. Okay, so those are perhaps the personality traits you would like to find in these profiles, which is completely different from a turnaround situation. This is also classic, right? A company that maybe has been doing very well for several years, but now for X reason, the company is not doing well, is not performing well. And now what you need is actually to prepare the company for a turnaround situation. And here, the kind of leaders you would expect, they should bring discipline, they should bring resilience, right? And perhaps think more on the short term and try to fix the situation as soon as possible. Another situation that I get exposed a lot, I think that I mentioned this before because we work a lot with private equities, is M&A and what happens after that. So the post-M&A, post-merger. And here you need people, candidates able to negotiate. Right? There's a lot of negotiation involved in the M&A, and then after that as well, people that can align good stakeholder management, right? Because from one day to another, the situation changed completely. Maybe you need to report into someone else, into another company, so that culturally
adaptability as well.
It's very, very difficult actually to manage this situation. And then the last one, I mentioned hyper growth, and here I talk more about expansion. So typically companies that are, for instance, expanding their business internationally, right? So a Spanish company that has always been in Spain, and from one day to another, they said, okay, it's time to go international. And then our plan is to be selling in France, in Germany, and the UK in the following 3 years, right? And that also, it's a critical decision. And here you need, of course, adaptability. You need cultural awareness. You
Yeah.
need to bring more international people in order to accelerate the transition from being, again, a local company to more of an international one. So again, this situation requires a specific leadership traits, and we try to adapt depending on what the company needs in that precise moment.
So again, adaptability in your role is a very important quality. And I'm thinking of the job, like maybe when you started a decade ago and what it looks like now. And really from assessing a candidate, from assessing a CV or even assessing a person in an interview or even conducting, some kind of assessments of the strength, the personality of the candidate, to assessing what the business needs at a given moment. It sounds like the skill set that is needed from someone like you is very different.
It is, and I would say that you would think that a headhunter needs to be very good at, of course, having access, finding the right candidate. So the sourcing piece is critical, and it is.
It's
of
not
course.
going anywhere, right?
It is. You would also expect this person to be very good at assessing, people, and of course it is. But I would say there is something actually that is extremely important and comes first, which is having a good or a strong business judgment. So having a business acumen. You need to understand what happens in this industry, in that company.
Yeah.
If you work in supply chain or you work in marketing or sales, you need to understand what these guys do very well.
Yeah.
And not only in their silos, but how supply chain impacts the business or how marketing impacts the business in that specific company, in that specific industry. So this is, of course, again, it links to curiosity. It is very important to be constantly, knowing, exposing yourself to new things, being very curious. And then with time, and obviously, I mean, for instance, myself, if I talk about myself, I come from legal, but then I've done lots of things. I actually trained myself in finance to understand, okay, what is a P&L?
Yeah.
Because I think that's actually the most important thing in an
clients,
organization. How to read it and then to understand, okay, but the P&L in a technological company is very different from a P&L in pharma. Okay. So this is important. I also trained myself in a general management program in a business school. Why? Because I wanted to have a broad view of what happens in a company. So I think that when you get to the C-level, to these critical hires,
you have to speak their language.
Yes,
you have to understand the reality.
You have to be, of course, you're surrounded by people, and most of them, they might be even more bright than you are, but you need to understand the language.
You always want to be the silliest in the room.
Well, definitely.
That's a
but you want to
that
understand what they say and the problems and the challenges they have. And I think that this is critical, and this really makes the difference between a good headhunter or just someone that can maybe actually find candidates, but he or she will be missing a very important piece.
A great headhunter is a business partner,
Yes.
right? Somebody that helps you grow your business or keep it, thriving, or make the right decisions for it to keep just going, right, for a while. So that's perfectly understood. And so far we talked about assessing candidates, almost like I would say individual contributors to a company and having a significant impact on a company. But I assume your role is also very systemic in its vision. And, what in your view separates what would be, let's say, an average C-level team versus a high-performing one? When you try to identify that missing piece of the puzzle to turn a team into an perfect execution kind of team, or...
I have an answer for that because, of course, within my career, besides placing the candidate for one specific position, something that I've done a lot and we do today is assessing the leadership team for whatever reason. Sometimes the company wants to assess the team to understand, okay, this team brought us here, but is this team ready to take us to the next phase, for instance? Or, for instance, it's a private equity willing to invest in a company and they want to understand, okay, who is in charge, right? What are the strengths? And look, if we analyze, I think that when we look at executive committees, or a good performing team is the one that is able to first challenge, challenge each other constructively. So that's one thing. And then I would say is a team that is able to make decisions without all the information.
Yeah.
An average team is the one that delays decisions And today, again, where speed
Not a
is so
luxury
important,
that we can afford.
you cannot do that. And the ones that operate in silos, so every person just looks at their own agenda, right? And
Yeah.
this is extremely common, I have to say.
Yeah, I hear that
Extremely
a lot
common.
as well.
So you
Yes.
see companies coming at us and explaining the situation. Hey, this is happening to us, and you're not alone. Okay, so it happens everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you assess that ability in a candidate to break those silos and work in a more, I guess, collaborative, integrated way?
I think, well, that is probably, I would say this is one of the main functions of the CEO, right? So the CEO, what he or she needs to do is actually make sure that the strategy and the communication cascades down. Everyone knows where we are and what we want to be. And I think that this is even more important than sharing a common set of values, because we talk, and this is my personal view, maybe I'm wrong. And of course, sharing as a team similar values, that helps. Okay, that helps. But I think it's even more important to have all the information, to know where we are, where we want to be. And once a decision is made,
missing maybe
where
as
we're
well.
missing, but then we
Right?
commit.
Yeah.
Even if we don't necessarily agree 100% on everything. But when the decision is made, we just go for it as a team and we commit. Okay.
Yeah.
And before that, of course, there will be hard, difficult conversations, and everyone needs to actually be able to speak up and say what he or she thinks. But again, once a decision is made, we go, we execute. And this is probably the most important thing, even more than sharing a common set of values.
Yeah.
Again,
So
this is my
it brings,
personal view.
of course, it brings a lot of what you already described before, indeed, together. Having a clear North Star, overarching goal, but also, we talked a lot about this action orientation, this low ego, humility. No, my interest is moving this forward and making this happen, right? Rather than just getting the reward for having led that initiative.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. If you had one piece of advice that you'd like to give, and I know it's a bit of a generic question, but that you'd like to give to a CEO today, trying to complement their exec team, what would that be?
I think it's circling back to something that we said, but I would say to a CEO willing to hire someone, spend more time defining the problem, defining the situation, than assessing the candidates. It's typically not about hiring the wrong person. It's about hiring a person for the wrong situation. Right? So this is probably the most important thing.
The right candidate for the right situation.
Exactly. And then that means spending more time beforehand. So spend more time before, and then expect a fast execution during the process.
Yeah.
But spend time at the beginning. All the time you invest at the beginning, it's time that you win throughout the process.
Yeah.
So that would be perhaps the
and we understood all the severe consequences of not doing that correctly.
Yes.
Not doing that investment from the beginning.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Álvaro. That was very insightful. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks a lot.
And I wish you a lot of success with developing KINT in Iberia and beyond.
We have a lot of work to do, and thank you for having here.
I'm sure. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you again.